Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am finally bringing you my review of The Wild Robot, written, directed by Chris Sanders, starring Lupita Nyong'o, Pedro Pascal, Kit Connor, Bill Nighy, Stephanie Hsu, Mark Hamill, Catherine O'Hara, Matt Berry, and Ving Rhames. And this, of course, follows Roz, a protocol robot made to carry out homemade tasks, but finds herself wandering the wilderness, learns how to adapt and survive, and somehow unwittingly falls into the position of being a mother for a baby goose. Now, this movie was something that I was beyond excited for. Was kind of bummed I missed the tip, but I'm like, it's coming out in a couple weeks, I can wait. And as soon as I saw the trailers for this movie earlier this year, I said, yeah, this might be the best animated movie of the year. And it seems like the consensus has been that overall, in that it looks to be the front runner for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars over Inside Out 2. And I'm really glad that I heard that, because I have had such faith in this for a long time. I mean, look, Chris Sanders is an absolute animation legend. He's worked on the story for some of the most heralded films from the Disney Renaissance era, like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. He wrote Mulan, and obviously has gone on to direct Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, which I think is honestly the best series that DreamWorks has ever done. I think the first two movies are the two best DreamWorks films, and leave it to the director of those films to also make the third best DreamWorks film. Yes, that's right. Out of what I have seen as of late, I really do think this is one of DreamWorks' crowning achievements as a studio, which only makes sense that it is Chris Sanders at the helm, because my goodness, first off, I have to talk about the animation here, because it is absolutely stellar. It is, of course, a great combination between the 3D and cel-drawn animation, akin to, more so, I'd say, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish than anything that they've done recently. And I think that's a huge compliment, because that movie was beautifully animated, and I think this one even more so. Like, the lush detail throughout the forest and the kind of grain that's added on top of that is a really, really cool effect and very nice touch that makes this movie feel very distinct from a lot of others that could be considered like this. Because let's be honest, a lot of people are going to be comparing this to movies like The Iron Giant, like WALL-E, that follows a robot through, some sort of crisis going on Earth, and then they learn how to feel and what that means for something that's supposed to be, let's say, artificial in a lot of ways. And I really do love this movie because of that. And to be honest, I think it does it better than both of those movies, because I really don't quite love WALL-E and Iron Giant, but I both think they're great, if that makes sense. But this movie is just so well executed from start to finish. Yes, it may follow a lot of beats that we have seen in the past, but they are all executed so well. Every single beat has some sort of reward and payoff to it, and I just absolutely loved watching the script come together. But even from the first, I want to say, 20 minutes of this movie, I was so enamored with the visual storytelling primarily, because these animals don't start talking until a little while into the story, and then that's when they really kind of implement the voice acting and whatnot. But I do love that there's a reason for it in this movie, as opposed to just another talking animal picture, which we've gotten a lot of. But this one is so great because it relies on great visuals to tell the story and drive it forward. But my goodness, this is such a funny film, and it really goes to some dark places. Like, I did not expect to go with the humor and somewhat macabre, and I absolutely loved that the movie wasn't afraid to bring that sense of humor out of its story in ways that make sense within a wilderness setting, right? While still very much appealing to kids in such a wide demographic, because kids will love this, adults are going to love it. It's the quintessential family film. which I don't think we've gotten in quite some time. Maybe Paddington 2 is the last thing I can think of that just hit so many notes for the wide, audience that is watching it. And I absolutely loved that is so consistent throughout this film, but also the fact that as much as it is this, kind of light family affair, it also definitely has its dark, dramatic moments as well that's heavily felt throughout this entire narrative at some very stirring and subtle moments more than anything, because it's like, sure, this movie isn't particularly original, but it does still have a lot of depth to it, which I think makes it such a standout in recent memory. And of course that also has to do with the character of Roz, played by Lupita Nyong'o. Now, I don't know how I feel about the Academy implementing a voice acting category, because I know that's been a conversation that's been going on for years, and it's an ongoing debate to this day. And sometimes I feel like, and this is not a discredit to voice actors at all, but sometimes I feel it may seem a little bit easy to do, as opposed to actually getting in front of a camera and really banging it out in real time. But I think Lupita Nyong'o's work in this film specifically really gives credence to that argument for making this category, because what she does here is absolutely incredible work. Because she has to convince you that she's this very monotone, very by-the-books programmed robot, to completely override that by the end of the film and insert emotion into a character that's supposed to be emotionless by design. It is an unbelievably impressive feat from an acting and voice work standpoint, and I really do think one of the best roles she's had in her entire career. And that's saying a lot, because Lupita Nyong'o is just one of the best talents out there. But honestly, a lot of these actors really slip into their roles here, like Pedro Pascal as the Fox. I know a lot of people weren't even recognizing that it's him, but he does some tremendous work here and gives his character a lot of vibrancy and life, but also a lot of great emotion. And I think that's the thing, these characters, they aren't two-dimensional, I think, at all, especially the main ones we're focusing on. And Kit Connor is Bright Bill as well. The little Bright Bill is one of the cutest animated characters I've seen in some time, and the relationship between him and Roz, this kind of surrogate mother and also surrogate son, but more so closer to being an actual mother and child, because the Wild Robot really is about motherhood and the unexpected challenges that arise with taking on such a role. And I absolutely loved how complicated it shows it to be, all the emotions that are going through both these characters' minds are very spot on and very relatable. I mean, these are talking robots and talking animals, and yet they feel so relatable. And I think that's kind of similar to something like Finding Nemo is a good comparison for this movie. But I do think Kit Connor, what he brings to the older version of Bright Bill in this movie is really great, and I think if their relationship did not work, this movie would not work at all. And a lot of people could say, oh, well, it's manipulative the way they, kind of make you feel a certain emotion with these two coming together and seeing how moving that dynamic is. But yeah, it's supposed to be manipulative. When the difference between this and a lot of other animated movies is it's actually earned. And I think the screenplay is very, very attentive to detail in that regard. Even all the side characters and their little things they've got going on tie into the narrative in some small way that make the bigger picture feel like a complete whole. And I absolutely love this screenplay. I cannot stress enough. I think it's even worthy to get a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination at the Oscars. Like, it really is a great adaptation of this book here. And there's a lot of other great voice performances in this film as well. Catherine O'Hara as the possum in this. She really brings a great sense of humor to it, but also a big sense of heart, which is very much felt with her interactions with Roz and a lot of other characters in this movie. And I think Mark Hamill as the bear here Like, it's hard to recognize that it's Mark Hamill. Even I was having a hard time, and I knew it was him. And obviously one of the most iconic voice actors of all time just for the Joker alone, but man, he just continues to prove year after year just how talented he is. And yeah, I really do love a lot of the work from all the voice cast here. I will say, not that it was necessarily a bad performance by any means. I mean, Bill Nighy is a great actor, Oscar nominated, of course, but I do think his character of Longneck was kind of there to state a lot of, you know, the obvious themes that we're already thinking that was almost a little bit eye-roll inducing. Now, that's probably one of my biggest issues with the movie, how obvious it is, how the movie kind of spells some things out for you, but you could argue, well, it's a kids' movie, they want the kids to understand it. Yes, and I do think this movie respects kids enough that they'll get the idea, but sometimes I just think if they went a little step further and didn't spell it out the way they did, they still would have understand the story, because without those scenes, I think the movie really does hit to the emotional journey that Roz and Bright Bill go on, and this is so emotionally rewarding. Especially Roz. I think Roz is one of the best protagonists we've seen in a movie in a long time, and her arc is truly one of the most remarkable that I've seen in any movie from this year, or the past couple years for that matter. Definitely one of my favorite movie characters in recent memory, and that is a fact. Now, a couple of other criticisms I do have with this movie. I'm not a huge fan of pop songs being implemented into animated movies, and this does happen at one instance because it's a really great training montage on its own, and had it just been Chris Bauer's wonderful and majestic score in this, by the way, one of my favorites of the year, really great work from him, I think that would have sufficed. But yet again, they have to throw it in there, and it is what it is. I mean, it's a small issue I can look over, but I still have to mention it. And another thing is, too, when it comes to the third act, I think it's great to watch, you know, the very rousing action-filled climax. But part of me wonders if it was necessary in regards to, like, how the story went about it. Even so, it is stunning to watch. The reds that come up in this movie, and the way the colors permeate the frame, especially near the end of this film, is truly just eye candy to behold. And I absolutely think that it elevates it to that regard. But also, by the end, there are a couple emotional beats that, especially, because I've seen this movie twice already, I really love this film, if you can't tell. But there's a couple of emotional moments that hit really hard, to the point where the first time I saw it, I was on the verge of tears, and I may have shed a tear or so, because, my goodness, this movie really gets it. It's a simple story, but that does not make it any less complex, and what it is saying about motherhood, what it is saying just in general about us becoming greater than what we are programmed to be. You know, because someone could say, oh, well, what is it saying about AI and you know, kind of protecting the wilderness? What does this mean? But I don't really think it's about that. I think it's more so finding the greatness within ourselves that perhaps a lot of people might not believe is there. And I think that is really what we should be taking from this movie. A very universal message that is not only helpful for kids, but just for anyone in general. And I think that's why The Wild Robot is speaking to so many people, because its themes are so universal. It's so funny, it's touching in all the best ways, it's beautifully animated, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue that this isn't the best mainstream animated movie of the year. I do think Mars Express still has my vote for the best, but my goodness, I mean, this is obviously going to win the Oscar, and it's going to sweep up for the rest of the year. I'm glad to hear it's doing very well at the box office, because this is one of those movies that comes out in the fall that absolutely deserves all the praise and all the box office. We need to support more films that aren't so IP driven, because we don't want just another sequel after another sequel of franchises that have been peddling them out for the last 20 years or more. And I think that, granted, this is a movie that I would love to see a sequel to in a series, because I think this could be the next How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. Of course, from the same director. You know he can do it again, and I certainly think that The Wild Robot is one of the best efforts in the entire DreamWorks catalog, and I'm going to give it a very solid 9 out of 10. Please see this one in theaters if you can, especially see it in IMAX, because that's a great experience watching it all unfold in all its splendor on such a gigantic screen. And yeah, you're really not going to want to miss this one. It's going to be talked about for the rest of the year and onwards. It is going to be a animated classic that people will talk about for years to come. But let me know if you saw The Wild Robot and what you thought of it down in the comments below. And please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to get back onto the TIFF reviews very soon, but I have to bring you my review of Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, so please stay tuned for that and so much more. I will talk to you very soon.